Hello, my name is Andrea Price, and I'm the Artist Services Manager for the Arts Commission. I'm here today to talk about the 2024 Accelerator Grant. Hopefully, I can drop some important tips and just general information about the program, the application process, and what happens after you receive the grant. So, if you happen to receive one, So the first piece of information to remember is that our first cycle of Accelerator Grant opens on April the 24th. So get your application together. That's all I can say. So general information about the Accelerator Grant provides financial support to local artists to advance their creative projects, their career, or a specific portion, like a specific body of work. So the categories of support for this program include equipment, supplies, professional development, and project support. And the granting amount cannot exceed 1,500. Like I said in the previous slide, our application opens in April, and then there are 5 granting cycles with deadlines that I'll share toward the end of the presentation, but they happen, there's a deadline that happens in May, June, July, August, and September. And it's usually toward the end of the month. And the dates vary just slightly, but yeah. So the eligibility requirements. So artists that are in a degree or certificate granting program of any kind at the time of application are not eligible to apply for an accelerator grant. And we just recommend that you apply when you're out of whatever that certificate or degree granting program. Artists who are working as full-time teaching staff at a college or university are also not eligible because one of the goals of this grant is to offer funding to people who are outside of those areas who maybe don't have some of the resources that you would have at a university or college, especially if you're teaching in any of those areas. So the access that comes to with being a faculty member, we want to give some of the we make sure funds go out to people that don't have some of that access. So, and then the last area is that artists are limited to only receiving one accelerator grant every 2 calendar years. So, for example, if you're a recipient of an accelerator grant in 2023, then you're not eligible again to apply until 2025. So you just have to sit out 1 year. So some of the other important eligibility requirements is you must have residence um, or have a creative studio within 30 miles of downtown Toledo. As I mentioned previously, the amount could not exceed 1,500. And then another important thing to remember is that the grant is not for reimbursement. One of the things that's required when you submit your final report, which we'll talk about why that's important and all of that stuff a little bit later, but um, you have to have the original receipts that proves that you paid for the funding post after the check was dispersed to you. So when you're thinking about that, just keep all of that in mind, especially if there's like a tight timeline that's attached to all of this stuff. Uh, it's not a reimbursement. It's for you to spend money on whatever the thing is. So speaking of those things, the categories of support that are eligible are for equipment, professional development, supplies, and project support. Those are our 4 categories for the Accelerator Grant. And inside of that, there are all types of things. So equipment, it could be a printing press, it could be a camera lens, instrument, a machine related to your artist practice. For professional development, it could be a professional membership, workshop, business training, residency, regional performance, the cost related to a conceptual or technical research. For supplies, it could be film, painting, paper, framing, costumes, printing costs. There's so much that is encompassed in all of these areas. And then project support, some examples could be just lift rental, liability insurance, temporary, the kind that comes with um, like an individual event or paying artists for a specific event. Um, for all of these areas, the main thing to keep in mind when you're selecting the categories, because inside of the application, you select all the ones that apply to whatever you are asking for funding for. Um, you want to make sure that it's specifically attached to your artistic practice, that's specifically going to help you move forward in your creative practice. So those are the things to keep in mind. It can fit in any of these areas, but it has to be specifically connected to your artistic practice and helping you move forward in some way. And then the ineligible categories of support, these are things that you can't ask for funding for. So non-essential technology. So when you're let's say that you're asking for funding to purchase a tablet, a computer, um, mobile phone, any of that stuff, you're only eligible if that's a main part of your creative practice. So let's say someone who is a designer who really needs that a grade on that laptop or tablet to continue to move forward with their career, to have more space or higher speeds or be able to hold more programs on their computer. This is an example of a reason why someone would ask for technology. If you give us some general thing about why you need technology funding and you're not being specific and it's not specifically attached to your creative practice and you don't describe that to us, then you're not going to receive the funding. So I want you all to be aware of these things so that you can create a successful application where the panel doesn't have a whole lot of questions at the end of the process, or like, this is an essential part of their practice, I don't know why they asked for this thing. So in terms of professional development, you can ask for costs for the things I talked about, like a workshop, a conference, all of these different things. Um, the cost of the admission or whatever fees to be able to go to some performance or some other opportunity that's happening. The important thing to remember is that you cannot ask for funding for the accommodations attached to it. So hotel, gas, like any of it, which includes like travel, lodging, all of that stuff. I just want to be specific about none of that stuff are things that you can ask for funding for. So um, you could use the funding to pay for the other part of it, which is some of these conferences or other workshops are expensive. You could use the funding for that stuff. So another area where we tend to get a lot of applications around is commercial photography. And it's something that we do not fund um, because we're focused on the artistic or creative practices and how that moves you forward. And because of the nature of commercial photography, we stay away from that specific area. But if you are a commercial photographer, but which just means like um, you're doing like senior pictures and uh, photo shoots that are less creative on your part and more you fulfilling the need of whoever you're serving. Um, some of those commercial photographers also have an artistic practice that sits outside of that. So let's say you also do landscape, or you photograph anything that leans toward the artistic side, so that you do portraiture where you're pulling models for that type of thing. Those are the things that I would lean to into inside of your application, um, so that you could receive funding. Just we want to see that it's an artistic practice and not just a business. And then regular overhead costs is another thing that you can not ask for funding for. So, like studio rent, utilities, things like that. I know it's different because we have another program inside of our organization that does allow that as um, a category of support. But for Accelerator grants specifically, overhead costs is not an area. As I mentioned in the previous slide, irregular overhead, like paying for a venue, or um, having temporary liability insurance, or um, the rent, um, the rental of some type of equipment that you need for a specific event. All of those are acceptable things. But if it's continuous cost over a period of time, like utilities and rent would be, that's not something that you can ask for funding for. Okay. And so the next area is um, that is important to talk about. So you've turned in your entire application, and we'll get into some of the details around that a little bit later. But uh, let's talk about specifically our panel review. So there are several steps before I can, as the art services manager, come back to you and send out a notification about whether you receive funding or not. So if you ever hear us talk about we're getting ready to go into panel, or there's a panel process. So this is what happens when your application gets turned in. So it's checked for eligibility requirements. If it fulfills all of those areas, then you're put into um, a pile of applications that get sent to a panel that the Arts Commission selected. So the Arts Commission is not the person that looks at your applications. There are people that are outside of our organization that participate in the process of reviewing every single application. So applications are sent to them. They score it based on criteria, and I'll show you what those are in the next slide for specifically this grant. But just in general, if you hear someone talk about a panel process, they're selecting a panel outside of their organization. They're reviewing all of the applications and scoring based on whatever those criteria are. So, um, and then you're going to go into like, we, depending on how many applications they receive, they could have anywhere from a week to several weeks to review applications. Usually for the Accelerator grant, it's between 1 and 2 weeks to look at all of the applications for each cycle. And then we go into a 2 to 3 hour review process where we look at all of the applications, starting at the highest scored and work our way down the list. And we talk about all of the applications, what they liked about them, the areas they felt like uh, were strong inside of them, and then some of the areas where they think that you could use improvement. And then at the end of the process, they decide who should receive funding. And this is why it's so important that we have a conversation, because advocacy and all of these things happen inside of the room, and they collectively, anywhere from 3 panelists to 7, depending, could be reviewing your application, and they come to a consensus altogether on these are the people that we recommend receive funding. Then the moment that is recommended for funding, Then it goes to the approval process. So we have to go through another layer of it being approved by our board. And as I spoke about previously, panel criteria for this specific grant, um, one area is intent in advancing your career. So because it's an accelerator grant, in the title I mentioned, or the small description of the grant, it talks about being accelerating artists to the next level of their career or project or whatever. They're looking to see that you have put something in your application that says how this is going to move you forward. Number two, the quality and completeness of your application. So they're looking to see that you spent time on it, that you were thoughtful about the ways that you filled out everything, that you completely answered all of the questions and didn't just give them one word answers when you have, like for the areas that there are paragraphs to talk about things. They want to fully understand what you're asking for funding for and know that you have the research and understanding to back it up. So another area. Then they're also looking at the artist impact. So how will this funding impact you as an artist? Will it help you? Did you talk about that inside of your application? If not, you're going to score lower in that area. So the next area is like community impact, and we'll get a little bit more into that a little bit later. But looking at either what community is this impacting and how is your project impacting community? And it could be in small ways, it could be in large ways, but we want to know. That's helpful to the panel as they're reviewing and they're scoring on that as well. The quality of the work. So this is where it's really important to make sure that you put your work samples in there and you put professional work samples where you don't have like a whole lot of things in the background of the picture, that it just looks very clean and professional. Your audios sound good, your videos are clear. All of those things is what they're going to look at when they're filling out your application. And it's going to either put you toward the top of the applications reviewed or toward the bottom. And you don't want to be at the bottom. So the last area that they're scoring on is capacity to complete. And so this is where it's really important that you have your artistic resume. You talk about what you're going to do over the period of time based on whatever you ask for funding for, because they want to know specifically if it's like project support, but in any of the areas, is receiving this funding actually going to help them complete whatever they're asking for funding for. So let's say you're asking for funding for an event. You need to talk about how this funding specifically is going to help you move forward in it and prove inside of the application that you are prepared and have all the other things in play to be able to complete it in the 4 months that you have to report on it. So the next section, so they use those criteria that we talked about previously to go through and review applications, score them, and then we go, they do the recommendation, they go into final approval, and then they come back to me and I can prepare contracts and create all of the emails that get sent out to every single artist that that submitted an application. So that takes more time because depending on how many applications we have, I have to create all those contracts and all of that stuff. So at the time that I have all of those assembled, both those that won't receive funding and those that will receive funding, then I send out all of the notifications at the same time. This is a really important thing because sometimes this is why it's important that within that month that you're checking your email to make sure that you receive the notification because um, sometimes it can just get lost in the email, and also you sometimes it can go to spam. So this is where it's really important that you put an email address inside of your application that is one that you reference, that you could actually go look at. Um, and even if you don't normally look at it, it's really important in this period of time that you do, because you could receive funding and um, never like realize it. Okay. Um, then I usually give a deadline attached to the notification for the people that are recipients of the funding and say, you have until this period of time to um, respond, send me back the contract in W-9 form that's necessary for us to issue a check to you for whatever you asked for funding for. Um, in order for that process to move quickly, it's just necessary that you send it in by the deadline. I also understand that things happen, and as long as you communicate with me, if something were to happen, let's say you don't see it within the period of time that I asked for it to be returned, if you just reach out to me and say, hey, I saw this after that period of time, or I was out of town, or something happened, and I'm just now seeing this, and we could get it rectified. But um, just making sure that we're communicating all of those things. And then, so after you filled out the documentation, you filled out your contract, you've read over it and understand all the things that are involved in it, and then sign it and send it back to me along with your W-9 form, which is necessary for us to be able to send you a check, because for tax purposes, our organization has to do that because you'll receive a 1099 at the end of the year, or the beginning of the next year for um, the funds that you receive from the Arts Commission. So this is where the application has shifted slightly. So if you filled out an application previously for an accelerator grant, we ask that you use the name that is on your tax form, just so that there is no um, discrepancies. Like we need the exact name that you put on your tax form. Or so if you would receive funding in 2024, um, whatever you're going to put on your 2024 taxes as your name, that's what we want to put you to put on your tax form. It's also really important that you put your address. This is another reason why we like you to fill out your W-9 form, is because we use the name and the address that's attached to that form to be able to issue your check. So just make sure that you're filling out that form fully, and it will speed up the process. One thing that people forget a lot of times is to sign it. And I know some people have LLCs and some people file individually. Both of those things are okay. We just recommend that you speak to your advisor about whichever one of those things it is. And if you're going to do it through your business, when I first send out the email that says you're receiving funding, if you can write me back and say, hey, I'm doing it under my business, so I can change that contract as quickly as possible and make sure that we're, again, just flowing and getting through the process as quickly as possible so you can get your funding. Okay. And then in the processing of those documents, it takes a couple of weeks because I have to get all those documents together, make sure that they're signed by the um, president and CEO of our organization, and then make sure they get to the financial office to go through the process of her creating the checks and doing all the things that she has to do to be able to send that to you. So those are all things to remember in the process because I know we want things to be extremely quick, and we try to make the process as quick as possible. But I just want you to understand the steps that are involved in it, because sometimes we can get anxious about receiving our funding. Completely understandable. Just letting you know the steps that are involved in the process. So, in terms of filling out your application, when you go into the system, we're going to walk through some of the steps of what that looks like. So, this is our the home page specifically for the Accelerator grant, and this is going to be a major resource for all things Accelerator. Uh, if you were to scroll down on this page, it shows you all the previous recipients of the Accelerator grant, which I think is really cool to look at. You can just see there's a variety of different people that have received his grant that sit inside of visual, literary, performing, um, and they range 2D, 3D, music, dance, all of the areas show up inside of it. Multidisciplinary, all of these things show up inside of people that have previously received grants from the Arts Commission. So I think it's just a cool thing to see. It's been happening since 2017. So yeah, these are just all things to keep in mind when you're filling out your application. Look at like maybe some of their websites and social media and other things. If you're like, I don't know um, what that's supposed to look like, I think sometimes it's helpful to see other people's pages and what they're doing to inform the ways that we move forward with our website, social media, um, and other things like that. So, so when you go to the homepage of the Arts Commission, so if you go to theartscommission.org and look at the page, up at the top, there is the bar, the menu bar, and the second one over says artists, and the third one down is the Accelerator grant. So if you come into our homepage, third one down is the Accelerator grant. That's going to get you to the page that gives you all the information about specifically Accelerator. So on the side menu bar, there are several things that will inform different things. So uh, as you can see now, it tells you that the first cycle will end. The deadline is on May the 20th, and it shows you the grant deadline, the grant guidelines. So if you click on that, it'll give you a PDF of a lot of the things that I've talked about today, that just talk about your categories of support, and the different parts of the application process, what's required of you, and all of that stuff. So if you want a quick thing that can just walk you through all of it in words, that's the best document for you. It's a quick read. Well, there are multiple pages, but um, it's quicker than the video that you're currently listening to. But I think both of those have value because there's a lot more information I'm also giving you in this video in comparison to the guidelines. But if you need something for quick reference, the guidelines is the best place to go. And then there is our grant reporting form. So these are extremely important because they are how we report on the funding that we receive. So we receive funding from different sources like the Ohio Arts Council, um, to fund out to artists, which is great. Love it. We have to report on that funding. So this is why it's so important that 4 months later, when that final report is due, that you turn it in, because you can also prevent yourself from being able to receive future funding from the Arts Commission. So there are there's final report information in there, and it'll be updated with the 2024 guidelines for that as well soon. But if you've received a previous accelerator grant and you've never submitted the final report for that, fill that thing out because it's just necessary. We're receiving funding and we have to be good stewards over that. Um, and so we need you to report on what happened with the funding. And it's just, um, I think a lot of times people make it more complicated than it has to be. You're just submitting uh, your receipts, and then you're talking about what happened. How did you spend the funding? The amount. Were there any struggles throughout the process? How did you benefit? All of those things. A picture of something attached to the project. These are the things that you're reporting on. It's not a complicated form. I know it can seem daunting, but it's really not. So, um, when the application opens up, so currently it's not up there, but there will be something right under the guidelines that says apply. And it will take you specifically to a different website, and it's Good Grants. It's the system that we use for all of our applications. And if you've applied previously for a grant, then you'll log in with that email address. Um, if this is your first time applying or uh, going into the system, then you'll have to register first. And you just enter your email address, your name, um, just some basic contact information, and then you'll be able to go to our main page at the Arts Commission. And like the steps are right here. You register, start your application, save as you go, and then you can submit your application at the end of it. So, when you log in and register after you get through that page, a simple page for the Arts Commission will come up with our name at the top, and then it'll say start your application. There'll be one specifically that is for the Accelerator grant, and you're going to click on that. Then there'll be an entry page where you have to like enter your name, and then it'll say a category that you have to select, and you'll specifically select the one that is attached to whatever cycle you're on. So it'll say if we're in the first cycle, which is up until May the 20th, then you're going to click on Accelerator Grant, 2024 Accelerator Grant, and then it'll say cycle 1. And you'll click on that, you'll enter your name, and then go to the second page, and you'll see all the tabs for the grant. So they'll show up like this, where it'll say, of course, it looks different for our specific application, but this is what the basic system looks like. It'll say, after you go into it, it'll say my application, you started an application, and then it'll show you the tabs, which are these gray bars at the top. And they each have information in there that you need to fill out completely in order to submit your application. The beauty is that you can save as you go. If you need to come back to the system, you can save and close and then come back when you're ready to continue, or you can save and go to the next and go through the entire application and then push submit your application when you're done. So this is what the one for Accelerator Grant looks like, and this is what I was trying to tell you about, is there are all these different tabs, and it'll start on the Start Here page, where it'll say Well, enter your name as an applicant, and then that second area is the category, and you're going to select. Not all of these will show up in the system at once. You should just see one for whatever round you're in. Um, but the round is really important because um, it's attached to whichever grant, the 5 ones that happen over the course of the year. But you should only be able to see one at a time. You'll select that specific one and then go on to the next slide. So that's really important. It won't let you continue into the application and you may have questions. Be like, why can't I see the application? It's because you haven't selected category of support and clicked next. So then you'll go through all of your tabs, fill out the general information where you just like ask where your address is and all of that stuff. And that information is important to make sure that you fit the eligibility requirements. And then the more general things where we're just making sure that you're not a faculty member, that you don't have you're not asking for funding for a commercial photography business, all of that stuff. And then you're going to go into the accelerator proposal where we talk about um, well, first you go into applicant information for artists, and that's just like some of your general information about who you are as an artist. So, like your bio, resume, stuff like that. And then the accelerator proposal, where you talk about specifically um, what you're going to use the funding for. And that's where you put some of the other documentation, and then your supporting materials, which is where you're going to put your work samples. And then there's demographic information at the end, which is optional, but we recommend you filling it out because it just gives us an idea of who we're serving and where the gaps are. So when you fill out that information, again, you don't have to, but it's beneficial to us because it gives us evidence of where our gaps are. So if we're not serving a specific population, a specific group of people, we can address that and make sure that we're targeting areas in which we are not currently serving so that everybody gets the funding that they deserve and it's not skewed toward one audience or another. So if you were wondering why we fill out demographic information, that's why. And we also report it out to our funding source. So for this grant, the Ohio Arts Council would get that information so they understand who's applying for it and who's receiving funding. The next section that we want to make sure that we talk about is so before I get into the question, there are several different parts of the application that are really important. It's what we spend the most time in panel discussions talking about. So that 2 to 3 hours, we're focusing really heavily on specifically a couple of questions inside of it because it tells us if you understand what the grant is for and you could clearly articulate why you needed this funding. So this first one is extremely important because it's what the grant is intended for. And so it says, how do you anticipate the Accelerator grant will advance your body of work, creative project, or career? So in this section, we want you to be really thorough about what you're asking for funding for and why you need that, and then how it's going to help you move forward in your career. So, an example, if you are asking for funding for, uh, let's say, you're a potter, um, and you're asking for a spinning wheel, and your rationale is right now I have to go to, although I have a home studio, I don't have a spinning wheel inside of it. I currently have to go to a studio and pay money to be in whatever that is for a certain amount of hours. it would be more cost effective for me to have this will inside of my already at home studio. I would be able to use it whenever I wanted. I don't have to I can create more because I have easier access to it, and I'm not expending that money attached to that. So I'm saving myself money. I'm able to move forward in my career because I'm creating more often and all of that stuff. I'm giving myself a resource that will help me move forward. I need this equipment to be able to help me move forward in my career. They're expensive. I don't have the funds to be able to do it out of my own pocket fully. I can contribute a little bit to it, but this is how much this costs, and I need the funding for this. So that's how you would talk about it. So if it's supplies for a specific thing, if it's technology, if it's professional development, I would like to move forward in my career, and I've been doing music or been working on this instrument for however many years you've been playing, and I need this extra. There's a really important and cool opportunity I have to work with whoever a person that's important in your field. This person is important because they've been doing it for this many years. They have the skills and are willing to teach me them. But it costs $100 an hour to work with them. Uh, I really would like to do this to be able to hone my craft, to be able to move to the next level, to gain some of that insight that they have that I do not. And taking these lessons will help me do that. I need this funding to be able to do that because I can't do it strictly out of my pocket. So this will help me to get larger venues, to um, create a larger following, to um, be able to perform in bigger spaces because I can show a greater range in my ability to play. So, all of these are things that you should talk about in this specific section. It will look different for everybody, but you really want to talk about what your practice is, how it relates to whatever you're asking for funding for, and now how that's going to help you move forward. Those are the things that you want to talk about in this specific section. The next section is describe how your work will impact your community. This section is seemingly complicated, but it's not as complicated as it seems. So, and it's easier if you're showing your work to the public in some way. So, um, you have to figure out who your audience is inside of this. So, if you're a performer, um, or you're playing music somewhere locally, some other way, um, whoever your audience is, talk about the impact of you moving forward with your career or this project, how that will benefit them. So if it's an event, the people that come to that event, how is it going to impact them? What is the hope that you have for how it will impact them? Are you exposing them to music they may have never heard before? Are you introducing to them to a new form of dance? Are you um, addressing some social issue? Are you working with a community that's underserved? Are you bringing light to a community that doesn't have a whole lot of uh, representation out in the world? There are so many different ways that you can approach this topic, but make sure that it is accurate and true to you. So, um, if you're a visual painter, who is your audience and what are you trying to convey to them? So, um, if you're asking for funding to be inside of an exhibition, what is that exhibition? Who's going to be present? And what do you want them to walk away from when they see your work? all of these things. And it doesn't have to be, um, there are mundane ways to impact community that are beautiful and just as important. So I need you to really think about who your audience is and how do you envision them being impacted by you doing whatever project, event, or creating a body of work, and make sure that you talk about it in that section. One thing to remember with both of these sections is they should be at least a paragraph. And I would say this one could probably be one paragraph. This section should probably be two or more. You have 300 words to describe, or maybe I gave you 150, one of the two. But you could say a lot in that. It means you do have to be concise because you can't give us a full essay on all of these areas, but um, be you don't have to be flowery with any of these the ways that you talk about any of this stuff. You want to be straight to the point. You want to explain specifically for how you think it will advance your career. Assume that the person who is looking at your application doesn't know your discipline. They have no idea. Um, they don't know the process, what it takes to do whatever it is. Assume that your panel knows nothing about whatever your area is and explain to them why receiving whatever funding you're receiving is going to help you move forward with your event, project, um, career in general. How is this going to help you move forward? That's the most important thing. And if you can, they're just things that you do regularly as an artist that um, the outside may never understand. So we just went through panels with the Toledo Lucas County Rescue Plan grant, and there were some performing artists who explained why they specifically needed funding to be able to create an album. And when they were able to articulate the different stages in it and how much all of that cost, then it gave a greater case for why they should receive funding. There were visual artists that talked about how expensive it is to buy certain materials depending on what your artist practice is. And by getting those funds, they would be able to move forward. So for this specific grant, it's not specifically like that one, but the very basic part is the same, is that you're trying to advance your career. This is how you do it. This is what you need. This is why you need it. Okay. And again, in this section, you're just talking about who's your audience? How are you impacting them? If it's via social media, if you're impacting other artists, if you're focused on a specific community, just describe those things to us so that we have a greater understanding of you as a person inside your artistic practice and how it affects the community. So the next section, extremely important. Another section we spend a lot of time on, and it is your budget. The list, this is a section that you want to list the costs in order of priority of the need with a short description of how each of the items is relevant to your artistic practice. So it's so important in this section that you don't make up the numbers, that you actually do the research on how much it costs to do whatever the thing is that you would like to do, and that you're specific about it. By you providing that key information that is um, that gives us a realistic understanding of how much it will cost to do whatever or to buy whatever this thing is that's going to help you move forward. You are giving them a clear enough picture to say, hey, okay, I think we should fund this. This is an important part of their practice. This is what they're asking for funding for. Um, this is the cost of it. It fits with inside the 1,500. Um, that's that's what you want to include. So, okay, so the next section that I want to make sure that we touch on is in the previous slide, I gave you basic understanding of what the budget is, but in this one, I want to dive a little bit deeper into the details around it. So, for equipment, let's say that you're asking for funding for equipment, you're going to put the category, you're going to say uh, that this is going to help me create a better quality of music when I record at home or something like that for my in-home studio. The um, thing that I'm specifically asking for funding for is a condenser microphone. And then I'm putting a specific price based on what I saw online. That is a quality microphone in 2000, I mean, a thousand, not 2000, $250 is how much that costs. Let's say I'm an artist, I'm working specifically in the area of visual art, and I'm asking for funding for supplies. I specifically am an oil painter, and it's really expensive to work in that field. So I'm asking for funding um, to be able to um, get my projects done faster because it costs a lot of money to buy the oil paint. So I'm having to piecemeal and buy small tubes more often instead of buying a larger tube that costs more money, but I will get more use out of, will have for a longer period of time, and I can move through my projects quicker. So I'm saying that it'll help me with the quality of a project and to finish faster. So I say that I'm asking for Gamblin oil paint in these specific colors. I would even do, I don't have it in here, but I would even do a breakdown of um, each of them cost $20. Or, yeah, let's say each of them costs, see how many I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I pick 10 colors. Let's say they each cost $20 for a 150 milliliter tube of paint. And you should be that specific. I don't have it in there right now, but you would put the volume of whatever you're working in. You just want to be as specific as possible inside of it. So you would put the volume, how many you're asking for, the cost of each individual piece, and that equals $200 altogether. Just so that they have an understanding of like, oh, they really did the research. They really understand how much it costs to do this thing. And I know that this funding will go toward them buying the thing they need. So, um, another example is professional development. And I kind of brought this up in the previous one. Let's say they needed a vocal coach and they want to improve on their vocal range and sound. And it costs um, $90 per hour. And they're working on 10 sessions that are an hour each. And so they need $900 to be able to go through these 10 lessons to help improve their voice. Um, you this the way that I broke this down of $90 per hour for 10 lessons is the same thing that you would do for the one up there. So you would say $20 per hour for 10 colors. and you put the total amount. And then let's say that you have multiple things. These things don't all go together. Um, maybe they could, I don't know, depending on what your practice is. But let's say that I'm asking for all of these things together. My total comes to 100, I mean, $1,350. And that's my total. So there's a section in there that asks, um, how much funding are you asking for? How much are you asking for funding for? And people often always put the 1,500. If that's how much it costs to do whatever you're doing and you've added everything up and it equals that amount, perfect. If it equals less, then put that amount. There have been so many times where I've looked at someone's budget and I've looked at that line and they say something completely different. Please put the actual number. Um, and you can round to the nearest one because we're not going to give you like cents. So if it's 1,349.50, just put $1,350. So the next section that's really important is your supporting materials. So this is tying back to the criteria that talked about you your the quality of your work, um, your ability to complete the project. All of that stuff is going to show up by this section. So you want to create a bio, which is just a narrative of your artist practice. So um, first, I want you to understand why we ask for bios. So this is what gets used in public statements, press release, similar promotion. Um, if we want to tell the story about you to a funder, this is what we would use to do part of that. And it also helps the panel to get a better understanding of who you are as an artist in a short paragraph that gives us understanding of um, specifically what you want the world to know about you as an artist. So it happens in third person. And if you don't understand what third person is, so for me, my pronouns are she, her. So I would say Andrea Price is a visual artist and arts administrator who's passionate about blah, 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 who has this many of years experience and all of that. She creates work around. And you want to put it in third person because first of all, that's how it's written. Second of all, when someone is putting it in a publication or a statement or whatever, they don't have the application for reference of what your name is. So by you putting it in third person of using your name and your pronouns inside of the paragraph, it is going to give a clear picture of who you are. Even if it's taken away from your application, they still understand who you are as a person and what your artist practice is, some of your accomplishments, all that. So the second section is the link to your website or social media. So you want to provide a link that's specifically attached to your artistic practice. So if you have a website, that's great. If you only have social media and you don't have a devoted page to just artistic practice, I just want you to be aware that if you use the social media that is like has personal nature to it, that the panel is going to scroll through your social media. So if there are things inside of that that you don't want them to see, or things that you just think are personal to you and you don't want to be a part of your application, just know that they're looking at everything. So be cautious with what link you choose. Second part of that is you want to double check, triple check to make sure that whatever URL the website, the link that you use and put in there, please make sure that it works. I would even like after you copied and paste it, like copy and paste it into another tab and just double check to make sure that it works. Because there have been so many times inside of a panel review where artists have put links that were where the numbers were messed up, or um, some part of the word was messed up, or something was wrong with it, and therefore sent them to a broken link that didn't work. And the panel had things to say about it because we're not able to see part of what you presented because it didn't work. So just double check to make sure that your link actually works. And then the third area is your creative work samples. So we require 3 of these, and we want you to upload your best professional photos, videos, documentation of your work, audio files, whatever, um, to the system. Now, one thing that I do understand is that when you upload to a system like that, sometimes you can lose quality if you have a really large file, like a video file or um, an audio file, and you want to maintain that quality, and you know that by downloading it to the system and decreasing um, will decrease the quality of it because of how small you have to make it. If you have it uploaded to YouTube or SoundCloud or some other website, or let's say you even upload it to Drive, and just make sure you make it public, um, or allow it to share the link that's attached to whatever that is, so that they the panel that's reviewing your application can go review it and review it at the quality that you want it. So let's say that you're utilizing videos on YouTube. Um, Instead of trying to put the the da- the file directly into that download space, you're going to open up a Word document and copy and paste that URL, the link to that audio file, that video in there, put the name above it, and you can put it into each of those sections. So let's say you're a videographer or you're a filmmaker. Let's say you're a filmmaker and you're showing clips of your work. You want to make sure that you copy those 3 links to the separate works, um, and put them in the 3 areas. That Word document, you're going to drag it into the 3 areas to upload the file that will have. I made that a lot more complicated than it has to be. The main point is that you want to put the links to your work that is too large to be put in there. And you want to put that all in one Word document, all 3 links, and upload them as a Word document. And then when the panel goes to look at your creative samples, they can open up the Word document and click on each of the links that show your work. So that's important. The next section is your CV or your artist resume, which is specifically related to your artist practice. So again, it's like a resume for whatever your artist practice is. and you want to upload a Word document or a PDF that shows the history of your um, creative work experience, the skills you have, the accomplishments that you have. That's the type of information that you want to include in this. Um, if you have exhibitions, if you have performances, if you have publications, this is the type of stuff that you want to put inside of that. What your skills are, just like you would in a regular resume, you want to include um, that information in there so that they have a full picture of your experience as an artist. If you have a degree in one of the art areas, put that in there. If you teach, if you, all these different things, um, if you've been doing workshops for a long period of time, if you, yeah, any of the things that you could possibly do, you want to put each of those accomplishments in there and how long you've been doing each of them so that we have a good understanding that based on what they asked for, based on their bio, based on the creative samples that they've given, and them showing that they have this many years of experience, they have these credentials in this area, they have these accomplishments when it comes to their creative practice, that okay, we can move forward with giving them funding. So again, make sure that you're only putting relevant things to your artistic practice that make a strong case for whatever you're asking for funding for. So the last thing, major thing that we're going to talk about is the timeline. So as I mentioned, there are 10 cycles that happen over the course. I mean, 10, geez, there are five. There are only 5 cycles that happen over the course of the year. And the first cycle opens April the 24th and closes May the 20th. And it closes, each of these deadlines are at 11:59 p.m. So I recommend that you do not wait to the last minute in case something should happen, in case you have questions, all of that stuff, so that I have time to respond to you before the deadline happens. Um, so let's say that you apply to Accelerator Grant Cycle 1. You are not a recipient. You can ask for feedback if I haven't already provided it about what the panel said about your application or about ways that you can improve it. You can apply it again in the second cycle with those improvements added to it. Mind you, don't just put the same exact application from the first round. Improve it for the second one. And you can essentially, let's say you don't receive it either the first 2 or 3 or 4. If you keep improving your application, you could apply for all 5. And let's say in the last one you receive funding. This grant is really intended to help people grow some of those artists, specifically grow some of the skills around submitting applications. So it's important that you ask for feedback. If you don't receive it the first time, it may not be that your application wasn't good or your work wasn't good. It could just be that it was competitive. There were a lot of applications and there was someone that scored higher than you. But what tends to happen over the course of the year or the 5 cycles is that people stop applying or they submit the exact same application. And the panel recognizes it. They actually read through and score each of these applications. They know when you just submitted the same application over again. But they also know when you spent that extra time, took the feedback that they gave you, and created a stronger application again. It makes a stronger case for you receiving funding. So just know that I am here as a resource. I will try to provide feedback if you're not a recipient on how you can improve. But if you have questions about it or you don't feel like you had a strong enough answer about why you didn't receive funding, you can always reach out to me and I can provide you feedback on how to improve. So The next important thing is final reports. So let's say that you are a recipient, you go through the process, and the check is given to you. You have 60 days to spend those funds because um, it's intended to like accelerate your level of your uh, you to the next level of your career, and there's supposed to be a quick turnaround on it. So you have 60 days to spend the funding and 4 months to report on the funding after you've received it. So the specific deadlines attached to those final reports are in the grant guidelines. Um, but 4 months following when you receive the funding, when you receive the funding. So just be aware of that. Pay attention to those dates. Again, the final report is not as daunting as it sounds. Just have to remember to do it. And um, yeah, I wish you tons of positive things as you guys complete your applications. Remember that I am here as a resource. And if you have questions around the application or any part of our process, please reach out to me and I'll try to provide as much clarity as I can around that. Um, Here are some of the other granting opportunities. So the Toledo Lucas County funding, that is American Rescue Plan grant funding from both city and county. So if you live in Toledo, uh, Ohio, or you live in the Lucas County area, or you have a studio in either of those areas, you're eligible for this funding. The application has already passed for the 2024 year, but there are still 2 more years of funding. So you would be able to apply in 2025 when that application opens up again. So it's something to keep in mind. And it offers financial support to local artists whose creative practice has been impacted by COVID-19. So the pandemic. So that's something to keep in mind. And also, we have a merit awards program that happens every fall where we pick um, 3 expert panelists from around the Midwest who are at the top of their cultural art fields or are doing great work in the area of the arts to give out 4 awards to local literary, performing, and visual artists who are outstanding in their areas. And it's just recognition of people that are doing amazing work in the Toledo area. And so there are 4 awards that get given out as long as you are within 30 miles of downtown Toledo, just like this grant. You can apply for this one as well. And this is for a more established artists who have been making work for a while. So it gives you a chance to have people outside of our local area be reviewing your applications, and you just never know what opportunities it can open up. So I recommend that people apply for it. So yeah, the application opens in the fall, and um, the award gets usually given out at the end of the year. So eligibility. So this is an important thing to remember. So especially for those that have applied to the Toledo Lucas County funding for this year, or plan on applying to Accelerator, but also want to apply to merit awards. They are all separate programs. As long as you fit the eligibility requirements for each one of them, you could potentially apply for all 3: the Toledo Lucas County, the Toledo Lucas County Rescue Plan grant, the Accelerator grant, and the merit awards, and potentially receive all 3 of them as long as you fit the eligibility for each of them. So I want you to keep that in mind. I think there was confusion around that last year where people thought that they could only apply to one. Like if I receive the Toledo Lucas County funding, I can't apply for the Accelerator. If I receive the Accelerator, I can't apply for merit or any of that stuff, know that you can apply for each one of them. They are separate programs that are intended to help artists in our local area. So make sure that you apply for each of those. One important thing to remember, if you have not submitted your final report for any of the things for, let's say you were a recipient of Accelerator grant um, last year or the year before, submit your final report, even though you wouldn't be eligible if you received it last year to apply this year. You still want to submit that because it would affect your ability to apply for the Merit Awards or Toledo Lucas County funding. So, any outstanding um, reports that you have, final reports that you have with the Arts Commission, make sure that you complete them, please. And if you have any questions around that, you can reach out to me. And that's where I'll provide my name and the best number to reach me at. So, my name is Andrea Price. I am the Artist Services Manager for the Arts Commission. And if you'd like to reach out to me, the best way to reach me is at aprice@theartscommission.org. And the reason why this is a beautiful way to reach out to me is because if you need to talk to me on the phone, we can schedule a specific appointment so that I have time to answer the questions and go through whatever you're asking me thoroughly. But also, if technology is not your strong suit or there's another way that you want to reach out to me, my phone number is also there, which is 419-254-2787, and my extension is 1018. Again, if you have any questions, reach out to me. Thank you.